Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor podcast. I almost said YouTube Live, folks. Man, when you start doing this stuff over and over and over, and we've done more YouTube Lives than we've done podcasts. I used to say on the YouTube Live podcast, and now on the podcast, I say, or almost say YouTube Live. Well, there you go. But this is the OU Under the Visor, OU Insider Under the Visor podcast with my man Parker Thune. My name is Brandon Drumm, and we are here to talk Oklahoma athletics and recruiting with you. And there's quarterback offers. Big one happened last night. We're recording this on a Friday morning. And there's a big decision that was announced on Wednesday as four-star quarterback and OU top 2024 target Michael Hawkins and OU Legacy has announced that he will be making his decision on April 8th. And there's a lot of other recruiting stuff we're going to talk to, along with we're going to talk Porter Moser too. So,
do we want to go there?
We're going to have to. We got it. You got it. You got to go there. You got to go there. So we have got a lot in store for you on this podcast. We're excited about it as well. So, Parker, I guess we would be bearing the lead if we didn't get to the quarterback situation.
No doubt.
In recruiting at the University of Oklahoma, Kevin Sperry was offered, Kevin Sperry Jr., out of Prosper Rock Hill, 2025 quarterback, who has 21 offers. And if you go look at his offer list on 247sports.com, 247sports.com, you will see that there is, that dude has an offer sheet that 99.9% of not just quarterbacks, just players in general would be jealous of. Tennessee, I'm off the top of my head, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Arizona State, Purdue. Am I missing some big names?
Got
Florida
TCU
State
most recently.
TCU, yeah, the dude has blown up. He is a big name across the college football landscape. And if you go and watch the film, you will see why. And he doesn't even have stars yet on 247 Sports yet.
Oh, he will.
Oh, yeah. He's a four-star, top 150 type kid, if not higher, maybe top 100 type kid in the country. The funny thing is about this region that people don't understand is the fact that he got the offer from Oklahoma because of what is in this region. And I'm not talking like Texas, I'm talking about in Oklahoma, it makes it even more impressive. Grady Adamson, who I know OU is just like they love. So that's a guy that hasn't got an offer yet. And we don't think he's going to get to that point because I don't think Sperry is going to last long uncommitted, if I was to guess at this point. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. Obviously you got David McCombs, Shaker Rising, Jamarian Fricklin, and then you've got all those quarterbacks in the state of Texas. 2025 is loaded with excellent FBS quarterbacks in this region that Oklahoma had just a stone's throw away. They have just the pick of the litter that they want. And that's what makes this offer more impressive to me, Parker, is that they had all those options. It's not like 2024 or 2023 where there wasn't that huge amount of just big name quarterbacks. You had to go try to convince a Jackson Arnold that Oklahoma was the right place for him. Luckily, there's a lot of connections that were there. It worked out for him in the long run. He became arguably the best quarterback in the class. In 2024, they got the Legacy that's right down the road as well in North Texas. And there's not much else for them to literally get after, right? In 2024, it's not this huge quarterback class the way 2025 is. So that to me is what makes this more impressive, because Oklahoma was like, they were that show. The fact that they're just now offering a quarterback in 25 shows you how intent they were on evaluating everybody as well.
Yeah.
And that was something that Sperry's respected.
And I want to say it goes back probably about a year, Brandon. That's about how long we've been talking about Kevin Sperry on this podcast, on the YouTube Live, certainly on the OU Insider VIP board. This has been a long time coming. Long before he ever took a varsity snap, it was clear that this was going to be one of the best of the bunch in the class of 2025 in the state of Texas and nationally, and that OU was going to have a lot of interest, especially with his ties to C4 and Sean Cooper, who, of course, just sent Eric McCarty to Oklahoma and have several high-end targets right now for the Sooners, including David Stone and Zadavian Sims in their program. So we've gotten to see a lot of Kevin Sperry already, even though he's only a rising junior and has only played 1 year of varsity football. We've been around him quite a bit, gotten to know him, gotten to experience what type of quarterback he is. I think the scary thing about Kevin Sperry, Brandon, and I mentioned it on the board last night, I don't want people to take this for any more than it's worth, but Kevin Sperry is more advanced as a quarterback than Jackson Arnold was at that age. And that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to end up being the force that Jackson Arnold was by the time his senior year rolls around. Obviously, in order for that to happen, kids got to keep the nose to the grindstone, got to continue to develop, sharpen his skills. But, man, watching Kevin Sperry as a sophomore, you would not have guessed that was a 15-year-old out there slinging it. No. And I tell you, he's got a cannon. For those that haven't seen the film, treat yourself. Go watch Kevin Sperry's film. That is a rocket of an arm, and he can run too. Yeah, there's a reason this was the first quarterback offer in the entire class for Oklahoma. It's because this guy's got a really, really high ceiling. He's a hard worker. He's humble. He's devoted to his craft. And if this is the quarterback that Oklahoma gets in the class of 2025 to spearhead their recruiting efforts, and all indications are that he is, that's best case scenario, I think, for OU in the class of 2025.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the deal is he showed out. I remember watching him, and obviously I don't think you were technically around. Well, you were, but I don't think you had been at C4 quite yet. I remember one day Sean Cooper called me and he was like, "Hey man, I got this quarterback. He's never played it down. He's going from 8th grade to freshman, and you need to come check him out." It's like, okay. So I go in there, and there's this long hair, wily, just kind of, quiet demeanor of a quarterback that just, he was real diminutive, man. Like, he just wasn't like somebody that you would just be like, oh, it was just eye popping when you walked out there. But Sean walked over to me and he goes, "I want you to watch, and I want you to figure out which one I'm talking about." Because there were some other good young ones. And Sperry made like this rollout throw to Morgan Pearson. And I said, "That's the dude." And he goes, "Yep." He said his daddy played linebacker at Washington State. He's got a younger brother that's coming up. That's another stud that isn't here yet because he's young. Like, I think he was like in 4th grade at the time, 5th grade. And maybe going into 6th. I can't remember. And he said he's just something. And I'm not kidding you. The first time I saw his younger brother Rozzy throw was the first time my son went down to C4, and Rozzy was playing with the 12U. My son was with the 13, 14U, and my son was with the 10 to 12U group. And I watched him throw a pass that was just like stupid. So that family is just genetically inclined to play football, man. Like, that's just what they do. And they also all train together down there with Craig Knoll and Mike Keith in Dallas and the Prosper Frisco area. Um, Jackson Arnold trains there with him. So does several other guys. My kids down there with them every now and then as well. And so I've gotten to know the Sperrys fairly well over the last 2 or 3 years. And you talk about salt of the earth people. As a matter of fact, the ironic part about this is Kevin Sperry Sr. and I talked about this offer, Parker, last Friday. Was it? Yeah, last Friday morning when we were both at the same gate at DFW. He was flying to LA. I was flying back to Oklahoma City from Tampa, IMG Academy Pro Day. And it was like in the afternoon, and I just gotten like this wrap, and I walked over there and I'm just sitting there eating it. And he is like 5 feet from me. I didn't even notice it. And he's like, so I look over to my right, and there he is. And we talked. I almost missed my flight because we were talking so much, but we had discussed like the OU offer. And at that time, he even said it. He goes, look, we respect how Levy's doing it. They've been honest with us and upfront the whole time. They let us know that they've been evaluating. They're trying to go through every quarterback that they possibly can in 2025. It had nothing to do with Kevin. They love Kevin, but they wanted to make sure he was the right fit for them before they made that offer. And he was the first offer they made. Sperry, obviously, you and I were there and watched him throw last year at the OU camp, and he was fantastic. It was him and Jackson Arnold were in the same group. They're buds, obviously, trained together and all that. So they came up at the same time and went through the camp together and all that type of stuff. And this I think, as far as fits go, Parker, this is perfect. You talk about as a person and what Oklahoma is culturally. There's not a better fit outside of him and Jackson Arnold and like Michael Hawkins. You couldn't find three better fits for the University of Oklahoma if that's what ends up happening.
The Sooners,
literally.
I mean, they got their guy in Jackson Arnold. They've zeroed in on their guy in 2024 in Michael Hawkins, and there was absolutely no reason why Kevin Sperry shouldn't have been the guy in 2025, and he was, and he is, and it makes so much sense from every angle. Brandon, Sperry is a hand in glove fit for what Oklahoma is building, both on the field and off. If they assume and they lock him up when he visits on the 23rd, also, like, keep in mind here, Michael Hawkins isn't committing until April 8th. So all of a sudden the question becomes, and somebody posed it on the OU Insider VIP board last night, do the Sooners get a 2025 commit before they have anybody committed in the class of 2024? And if you get your 2025 quarterback on board before his sophomore year is over, you want to talk about best case scenario.
Oh, yes. Yes. And you talk about a way to, because he's so respected. And not only that, if you get Kevin Sperry Jr. to pop, like, think of the implications of what is happening down at C4 right now and all the OU offers that are to come, with Amari Porter probably going to end up with one at wide receiver. Obviously, you've already got Nnnerei from Carl Albert that he's already got his offer. He plays with them. Davian Sims already has his offer. There's several other guys that will have offers in 25, 26, 27 classes that they have down there, because that group of C4 is absolutely loaded with huge FBS talent. That's why they have done so well in those 7-on-7 tournaments here recently. So the implications they're really deep, actually, because Kev is beloved and he is one of those guys that people just gravitate to, very much akin to Jackson Arnold. And I think you see the same thing with Michael Hawkins again. Like, we've talked about it. Like when you talk about North Texas and that 121, 183 north, all the way from Fort Worth to west of McKinney, and you just take that north all the way up to the Red River, those quarterbacks, the three that we just named, Arnold already at Oklahoma, Hawkins, and now Sperry, are revered in that region, literally revered in that region, and thought of as the dudes you want to follow if you're going to go somewhere. So if you can start, and people want to say, like, we joke about 2025. I think 25 is going to get a commit before 24. I do. We initially thought Xavier Robinson might pop, a little early, but I, again, was at Carl Albert yesterday, and that's not going to happen until like late May, early June, if not mid-June. So there's a lot of things in play there that are holding 2024 class up. The one thing Oklahoma has, man, is the fact that Kevin Sperry hates the recruiting process. Like, he does not like it. He hasn't even, they can't even call him yet. And he despises just the cattle call that essentially it is of, I got to call this coach. 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 I got to do my measurements. It's literally what it is. It's weight and how much do you weigh? What's your length? All that type of stuff. And he's not a big fan of that. He just wants to play ball and just mind his own business and recruit kids to come play with him. And that's it. So, I mean, they're going to visit on March 23rd. And there's a reason why we put a crystal ball pick in last night. And after I talked to his dad, I put one in, and you put one in afterwards. And it just seems like it seems inevitable at this point, right? Like it almost seems seems like it was almost destiny. Like the offer was going to happen. And we'll get more into that if the commitment with Sperry ever takes place here in the near future. Afterwards, we'll get his dad on here and we'll talk about that a little bit, because this was a big deal to the family. All you have to do, man, is go look at his dad's tweet yesterday. What was it was Jeremiah 11,
Jeremiah 29:11.
Jerry 29:11. Jeremiah 29:11 says, and he quote tweeted it, and he said, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And that was above the OU offer. At no point in time have they done that in any other offer. So you guys take that for what it's worth. Now to Michael Hawkins. Parker, this is your guy. Sperry was more my guy. We'll go with you with the Hawkins deal because you are glued in there. Talk about it. April 8th. He announced it on Wednesday. Let's hear. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, April 8th is the date, and that falls on Good Friday, so Easter weekend. And I mentioned it previously. We haven't podcasted since the junior day, so this will be the first time I mentioned on the podcast medium. But in essence, what I was told immediately following the visit on Saturday of last week was that the decision is going to take place soon. It's just a matter of the Hawkins getting all the extended family in town to be able to be present for Michael's decision. And so obviously Easter presents a real natural juncture for that to occur, because that's an occasion for you to bring family in town anyway. So can celebrate the holiday and they can all be present for Michael's commitment. So I was kind of anticipating that it was going to happen a little bit sooner, but I heard April 8th. I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense with it being Easter weekend and them wanting the whole family present. So we're about a month out, or I guess 4 weeks to the day as of right now, 4 weeks to the day from the commitment. And yeah, as things sit, really, really like where Oklahoma stands in this race and have. TCU and Kendall Briles made a push. They are by no means going to stop pushing, but I think it's very telling that TCU has started to press on some other quarterback targets, most notably Haas Haney from down at Aledo, 3-star quarterback that just recently committed to Duke, but he's a TCU legacy, and he's a guy that TCU has brought back to campus over and over and over again the last couple months. And I've seen him in person. He's a good player, real good player.
Mm-hmm.
But I think their pursuit of Haney suggests that they understand the writing's kind of on the wall here. Unless something changes drastically, Michael Hawkins is going to be a Sooner on April 8th. I expect that to happen. It feels like that visit this past weekend really did seal the deal, especially with the Sooners offering Malik Hawkins, Mike's younger brother, 2025 defensive back. And that was not an offer that was made to try and solidify Mike's commitment. I want everybody to be very, very clear on that, because Mike Sr. and I have had plenty of conversations about his two boys and their respective recruitments. And Mike Sr. is one that has told every school that has been pursuing or is pursuing Mike, listen, you are not to offer Malik for Mike's sake. You evaluate him independently. You offer him when you are ready. You had better not offer my younger kid to try and get the older one. So the offer to Malik comes completely independently of Mike's recruitment, and it was an eval that the OU staff took their time on. Malik is a really, really good player in his own right, and I don't want that to get twisted at all. This is a very similar to a Peyton Bowen, Eli Bowen dynamic. Right? We're not talking about the only reason you'd recruit the younger one is to get the older one. No, Malik is almost 6'2", 180 pounds at the cornerback position, and ran a 10.51 in the 100 meters earlier this winter, Brandon. 10.51. So, not shockingly, Mike Hawkins' kids can both run. And the plan, and Mike Sr. will tell you this, the plan was always for Michael to transition back to playing defensive back once he kind of became familiar with the quarterback position. But Michael stuck at quarterback. Malik ended up playing defensive back. And the OU offer was his third FBS offer, second Power 5 behind Arkansas. And those boys are going to play together at the next level. So if Mike Hawkins is a Sooner on April 8th, you can safely assume Malik Hawkins will be as well. And beyond that, the Sooners locking down Michael Hawkins would go a long way in the recruitment of 2025 5-star tight end Devon Mitchell as well, because Mitchell is in the class of 2025 right now. That probably won't be the case for long. That's a guy that is college ready, that right now is in the midst of processing his reclassification to the 2024 cycle. And if that goes down without any hitches, he's going to take official visits this summer and try to commit before his junior/senior year, before his final season of college, of high school football, which would be this fall. So that is one to watch. If the Sooners do indeed get Michael Hawkins on April 8th, I think with Hawkins in the fold, they immediately become the front runner, and they may already be, but I think they become the pretty obvious front runner for Devon Mitchell if they get Mike Hawkins on the 8th.
Yeah. So as far as Hawkins and TCU go, Parker, do you foresee them? I know you think that Oklahoma is going to be the pick on April 8th. And I talked to some people yesterday that I know within, the Switzer Center and stuff like that. And there is a lot of confidence with Hawkins at this juncture. A lot of confidence. Having said that, April 8th is almost a month away. Between now and then, could you see some curveballs being thrown with TCU to really throw a wrench in Oklahoma's proverbial lead, I guess?
Yes, I can see TCU attempting to pull that off, but I also think TCU has already tried and it hasn't worked. And we can delve into that more once I mean, there'll be a lot to talk about with regard to this particular situation and the post signing day tell all, which obviously is a long way in the future right now. But TCU has tried their darndest to try and reverse the Oklahoma momentum here ever since Briles made the transition. And for my money, and I know others will dispute this, that's fine. For my money, TCU has never led this race. The second Briles left Arkansas, and I think Oklahoma still led between the Sooners and the Razorbacks in that battle at that point. But once Briles got to TCU, yeah, the Hawkins started to seriously consider TCU for Briles' sake. But I don't know that since Michael Hawkins got the offer back on July 27th, OU has ever lost their lead. Now, there were certainly times where he was really starting to warm up to Arkansas. There were times where maybe he had his future seriously in question as to whether he wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps at the University of Oklahoma or go his own way to a place like Arkansas. But man, and again, this is something that we talked about as far back as the fall of 2021 when Michael was a sophomore starting for the first time at Allen High School. If OU ever got that, or if OU ever chose to offer Hawkins, it was going to be really, really hard for any school to beat them out, just because there is so much love for the University of Oklahoma within the Hawkins family. And yeah, Mike Sr. only played a year at OU. I think what we're finding out is that doesn't matter.
He stayed close
because
he stayed close though with even Stoops. He told me one day that Stoops, Bob and Mike and Venables obviously were guys that helped him out in his career, that pushed some NFL teams to give him a chance and all kinds of stuff. Like, there wasn't, just because he left the program, there wasn't this turn their backs on him type of deal. And that has stuck with Senior for a long time.
Yeah. And to add to that, his relationship with Jeff Lebby goes back 20 years because they were members of the same recruiting class. We mentioned that on the live series before. And it's funny, isn't it? Because you see a very similar dynamic playing out right now with Mike Hawkins Sr. and Jamar Mosey up in Kansas City, because those were two guys that, although they played at Oklahoma, they did not finish out their careers at Oklahoma. Still, that hasn't really diminished their adoration for the university and their relationships therein. And you're starting to see those relationships pay dividends in the Sooners' respective recruitments of their children.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Oklahoma talks about this. And for those that aren't on the podcast or watching on YouTube, and I'm air quoting the family aspect. And these two would be the ones almost would be token pieces, right, of proof that when you go to Oklahoma, you are automatically and will forever be a part of that family of Oklahoma. Because if that wasn't the case, they wouldn't be allowing their kids to even think about going to Oklahoma. Correct?
Correct.
I mean, I think that's very telling. And I think again, Stoops is revered by Oklahoma fans more so now than ever because of what he did after Riley left and all kinds of stuff, and keeping the recruiting class together as best he could for Venables before he arrived, and getting out and recruiting and doing all that type of stuff. But here's another piece to the pie where he has essentially helped Oklahoma for 20 years behind the scenes, and you didn't know the future. He had no idea that these guys were going to have kids that were going to be eventually top targets for Oklahoma, and with Mosey being a coach with a kid that could be a 5-star wide receiver, number one, and number two, being a coach at a school that is producing just ridiculous amounts of talent. Like, Stoops didn't see the future, but it shows you the person that he is, that he stuck with those guys, allowed them to still be a part of the Sooner program in the history of it, regardless of if they finish their career out there or not. And that tells you the man that Bob Stoops is, honestly. Like, I think that's really cool and like something that probably needs to be, dived into a little bit more. Maybe a story written about it or something like that. Like, that's really interesting to me, Parker, especially if it works out and all their kids end up going to Oklahoma. Like Isaiah Mosey, the Hawkins kids, and that oh gosh darn it, that 5-star, what's his name? Oh, Williams Nnnerei. Like,
Yeah.
if all that ends up taking place after Caden Green, I mean,
yeah. So let's
Bob Stoops needs to we're not worthy.
yeah, no joke. I think I dropped my crystal ball for Ike literally 8 minutes after he got the Oklahoma offer.
You did.
If Isaiah Mosey is not a Sooner. In fact, I was talking about this with a colleague in the network earlier this week who mentioned, hey, I'm thinking about going out to Lee's Summit North to check in with Mosey and see where he stands with the school I cover. And I said, man, that's, I can help you talk to whoever you need to talk to, but just be forewarned, the overwhelming likelihood is that kid is a Sooner in the end. That was always the case for Caden Green. That has always been the case for Isaiah Mosey. But the one that we were kind of unsure about among the 3 blue chippers in back-to-back classes for Lee's Summit North is 2024 5-star edge Will Nnnerei, who took his most recent unofficial visit to OU this past weekend for the junior day. And that went well, Brandon. That went very, very well. And look, I've been skeptical to this point about where OU stood with Nnnerei. It always felt to me like they had some questions that they needed to answer. They had some selling that they needed to do to really hammer it home to the kid that he had a place at Oklahoma and that the fit for him made sense, independent of having his teammate there, going to the school that his coach played for. It almost felt to me, really from the get-go, as if Oklahoma was going to have to convince Will Nnnerei that OU was going to be his school and not just the Lee's Summit North school, right? Mm-hmm. That it made sense for him as an individual and his career and his life. And it sure sounds like a lot of those questions were answered. A lot of those concerns were alleviated. And all in all, the Sooner staff hit that visit out of the park.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to, again, like I was telling you off air, I talked to somebody last night, essentially about Nigel Smith, and Williams Nnnerei, David Stones, Davian Sims, and obviously my connection down there with Sims and Stones and the C4 stuff is pretty deep. So I'm actually going to have some notes on OU Insider later today, Friday, through the weekend. Honestly, would probably be a better bet on those guys as we head into the spring break and stuff like that. But they were the response I got from them was if there was some sort of question about how Oklahoma felt with where they stood with Williams and Nnnerei, it was crushed and completely done with by Sunday evening, I was told. Oklahoma walked away feeling like not only were they the team to beat, they were going to be the team that was going to be very hard to beat. Because obviously Missouri wants to make a run there. Oregon, Texas A&M, a couple of other programs are trying to make a run there at him. But his fit, the cultural fit for Williams Nnnerei, the personality fit, they said was just perfect. And he started realizing that on this trip more so than at any other point. And he's visited Oklahoma like 6 times, it feels like. And
Mhm.
this wasn't one of those, like, it just kind of was an epiphany to him. They said, like, you could tell, like, there was like a point during the visit that it just clicked, and his personality went from kind of reserved to outgoing on the
Yep.
visit. And at that point, there were several people around him that were like, okay, this is really starting to work in Oklahoma's favor at that point. So,
Yeah.
and I literally in the middle of this podcast, I dropped a crystal ball for Nnnerei, by the way.
Oh, nice.
So.
Look at that. Live crystal ball mid podcast.
Yeah, I meant to do it last night. I just sort of, when we started talking, I was like, oh yeah, I had that conversation last night.
How about it?
Yeah. All right. Well, we're talking about defensive linemen. Let's continue to talk defensive linemen. Oklahoma. Like, there is a legit chance. This isn't hyperbole. This is not hyperbole, folks. I'm trying to pull up the top. I'm just going to do the offers and go to the defensive lineman here. And as far as Oklahoma stands, like, they hosted Edric Houston, which is the number 8 overall player, composite player in the country, out of Buford, Georgia, this past weekend. And there is a really good chance that Oklahoma gets an official visit from him down the line. Williams Nnnerei is the number 9 player in the country, and Oklahoma leads for him. Like, this is not hyperbole. Listen to this. David Stone's the number 13 player in the country. He is from Oklahoma, plays at IMG. He is visiting Oklahoma on March 13th. He will go to Michigan State and then come back to Oklahoma with his family. There's a good chance he arrives and visits Oklahoma again before he heads out back to IMG to finish up everything. So you have that. Then you go down to Nigel Smith, the number 39 overall player in the country. Oklahoma, leader for him, Parker. Then you scroll down to, or you scroll down to the number 165 player in the country, in Zadavian Sims. But if you look at where he ranks on 24/7 Sports, he is the 65th player in the country. So Oklahoma leads for him. And again, I'll have notes on several of these guys coming up on OU Insider VIP in the coming days. Another player that Oklahoma is making a strong push for is Caleb Mitchell Irving, who was at DeSoto, now at Parish Episcopal School in Dallas, Texas. He is one of the top players in the country. He is ranked on 24/7 Sports as the composite. I don't know. I can't tell where he's ranked, but anyways, point being is that he is one of the top players in the country, and Oklahoma's in a good spot for him, Parker. You go to defensive ends. Like, this is the weird part about all this. And you take a look at Jay-Sean Ross, who is, without a doubt, outside of Williams Nnnerei, considered the top edge rusher Oklahoma's going after.
Yep.
And Oklahoma is in a very, very good spot for him. Logan Thomas out of Paytow, Oklahoma's in a good spot for off the edge. And then obviously TJ Lindsey, who I consider more of a D lineman than I do an edge, out of Bryan, Arkansas, will take an official visit to Oklahoma soon. I will be seeing him soon. His quote handler, the guy that runs the recruitment, Earl, and I will be meeting up, and I'm actually going to be on their podcast here soon, but I'm also going to see them at DRZ here next weekend and talk to them, and I'll be in Arkansas as well prior to that. So there is a lot of D linemen. And look, everybody wanted 2023 to be that and be the case there, but essentially it wasn't easy for Bates to come in and try to grab guys that were already established with other schools, right? The relationships were deep with those schools leading in to 2023. Because remember, he didn't arrive until after signing day, right? Or a little before signing day, the final signing day in 2022, if I remember correctly. It was like late January, if I remember correctly, when he got hired, correct? Am I right on that date?
January of 23. Yes, that's what it would have been.
Yeah.
Or 22,
So
excuse me.
22. So essentially, he just had like 10, 11 months to go from recruiting for Clemson to recruiting for Oklahoma and trying to convince them that now Clemson wasn't the place for him, but Oklahoma was the place. Well, with this 2024 class, he's been recruiting them for now, will be 2 years come December at Oklahoma. And people want to, Parker, people want to say, well, he should have done it last year, blah, blah, blah. Look, yeah, it was easier for some, like, let's Miguel Chavis. It was the first time he had ever been a position coach. So him coming in and recruiting guys to Oklahoma, yeah, he was helping recruit at Clemson, but he wasn't outright recruiting dudes to Clemson on a day-to-day basis. So it was easier for him. Brandon Hall going from Troy to Oklahoma, he was recruiting a completely different athletes, so he got in with those guys. He didn't have to convince them that, no, don't go to Troy, instead of going to Clemson like Bates had to. Like, there's a lot of things that worked against Todd Bates in last cycle. Also NIL, last second NILs and all kinds of stuff. But I mean, it is what it is. But when you look at what he's doing in 2024 in the class that him and Miguel Chavis could put together, Parker, like, that's epic. What do you think the odds are? I'm going to name them off real quick for you.
Okay, let's do
Percentages. I give this a 65% chance of happening.
Okay.
65% chance. So it's 15% greater than a 50-50, guys. So that's a really good chance that I think this happens. And we're also in March, so this is kind of whatever. That Deshaun Ross, Nnnerei, Nigel Smith, David Stone, Zadavian Sims are the 5 commits signees on the D line.
Wow, 65% chance.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I'm way lower than you on that. I would say 15 or 20% chance. Yeah, just because, like, if you think about it on an individual level, obviously I think OU ends up with Nnnerei, Sims, Nigel Smith. I think their odds are very, very good with those 3. Stone, I still think ends up at OU, but obviously that's gonna get hairy. We kind of all have that understanding right now. The one I'm unsure about to this point is Deshaun Ross.
Right.
And I think
I guess I should have left him off there. Yeah, you're probably right. I should have left him off that.
Yeah, the reason for that is because right now he's just kind of how can I phrase this? He's just kind of chilling, man. Like, he's not really engaging with the recruiting process yet. He has no plans to take any visits in March or April. He's not going to take his official visits until the fall. And so unless somebody gets in the kid's ear and says, hey, you know what, you're going to want to accelerate this whole process for your sake and the sake of whatever school you want to end up at, then I say, for instance, OU continues to heat up with a guy like Caleb Mitchell-Irving or Joseph Jonah Ionje or Jonah Ajonye. There you go.
Or TJ Lindsay.
Or TJ Lindsay.
Yeah.
Like, if one of those guys,
I need to go lower. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. If one of those guys wants into the class by July or August and Deshaun Ross still hasn't taken his official visits, then, regardless of how high a priority he is for Oklahoma, and he's a really high priority, the Sooners may decide, you know what? A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Or rather, in this case, a bird in the hand is certainly worth 1 in the bush.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. So let me rephrase the question. You're right on that. Okay. Those 4, the other 4 outside of Deshaun Ross, odds are that they're in the class. Percentage. Man, it goes up quite a bit, doesn't it?
It does. So you're talking Sims, Stone, Smith, Nnnerei.
Yeah.
I would say you're looking at even 50-50 odds that all four of those guys end up in the class. And I think the one thing holding me back on it right now is the David Stone deal, because I'm comfortable asserting that there's actually a very high percentage Nigel Smith and Zadavian Sims end up at Oklahoma. And I think the percentage is very quickly trending into the very high territory for Will Nnnerei as well. I just Stone, you got to handle with care, and I'm going to continue to.
Yeah, there's people around him. I talked to somebody that's known the kid since he was probably second, third grade, I think, yesterday. And they said there's people around him that are just causing all sorts of problems. I'm not going to name the people around him, but like, if you follow, you kind of know the situation there. And it's gotten to where there's been, I'll say this, if the sister and the dad have anything to do with it, kid's in Norman, and it's not even close. Like, not close at this point. So obviously his sister goes to Oklahoma. He's very close with his sister. When he comes back to Oklahoma, that's where he stays. So you can expect, like, actually, David Stone is landing in Norman, or he landed in Norman an hour ago as we record this at 10:50 a.m., according to his tweet that he put out. So he will be going to Norman and staying with his sister, I'm told. So, I mean, that's always good news if you're Oklahoma, which means, yeah, a lot of the staff is on spring break at this juncture, but I'm willing to make a bet that Coach Bates is willing to stick around for a few days before he leaves for a few days, and then returns after David Stone returns from his other visits to get him back on Norman before he heads to IMG. So there's a good chance that David Stone is in the Switzer Center a few days, not just on March 13th, but I'm willing to bet he's in Norman 11, 12, 13. I bet you he's there 3 days in a row with Bates. I'll bet money on that, because he's right down the road from there. So again, like I said, he's told me this before. He goes, I don't tweet out when I'm in Norman, and I'm in Norman all the time, and I'm with Coach Bates all the time. He goes, I have no reason to do that, because I'm right down the street. That's why my relationship is the best with him. And he talked to us in a group, and I'm going to have all those quotes up on OU Insider here in the next day or so. Like, literally told us, Parker, my best relationship without a doubt is Coach Bates. And he goes, I respect the man, because I tried to commit there 3 different times and didn't happen. And he's still stuck with me. So, and he said that publicly to a bunch of reporters, and nobody ran with that quote. Like, I was just like, why is nobody using this quote? Well, we've talked about it, Parker. Why would you not use the quote? It takes a lot of drama out of stuff, doesn't it?
It exactly. It does take a lot of drama out of the process. If people know, oh, the kid tried to commit to Oklahoma 3 times, then you start to see through the smoke and mirrors and realize, okay, if the kid has his way, odds are he's going to
Oklahoma. Excuse me. Sorry, I had something caught in my throat there. It was a Peyton Bowen. Does this not kind of remind you of that situation a little bit?
No, it does.
Where you got well, look, like, everybody kind of knows the mom wants him out of state, right? Like, we'll just go ahead and say it. Like, this literally has like that feel, right? So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. You would think that it's going to play out pretty well for Oklahoma down the road. Let's talk a little bit about running back recruiting before we go into basketball and close this thing out, and get a little junior day talk as well. But I guess Xavier Robinson, Tavani Mizell, Caden Durham, James Peoples. Those are your four. I think they take three.
I do too.
And here's why. Because I talked to Xavier Robinson yesterday. And I talked to his coach, Mike Dunn. We sat in there and talked for about an hour and a half about stuff. And I'm here to tell you, like, he is open to being a Samaje Perine / Braden Willis / Dimitri Flowers / Trey Millard type guy. Like, he is okay with that. He knows that that would get into the league. He knows that that would allow him to be just such a versatile back in today's NFL world, where it's moving more and more to the college type offenses. It allows him to be a piece or part of an offense if that fits, if he fits those pieces that said team needs, if they need him in the draft. So he's okay with that. He will be back to Oklahoma. I think so. He's on April 6th. He's visiting Iowa State. On the 22nd, he's going to Oklahoma spring game. Then you have Caden Durham. Grew up right down the road from Norman. Family's gone to Oklahoma. Family lives in Norman in Oklahoma City. Just a lot of ties to the state, a lot of ties to the university. He just feels like a Sooner. Like, that just feels like it's happening. James Peoples, if you were going to name the three guys, Tavani Mizell, ironically, just decommitted from UGA. If I was to pick three guys, I would pick Robinson, Durham, and Mizell as the running backs in the class.
And I think I would too, because what's abundantly clear, given the chronology here, is that Tavani Mizell wants to be a Sooner. Let's just call a spade here. That is the reality. Tavani Mizell decommitted from Georgia, immediately following the unofficial visit to Oklahoma, which was his second since he's been committed to Georgia. And you look at his Twitter activity, you read the interviews he's done, the kid wants to be a Sooner. Now, for DeMarco Murray, who, by the way, and we've talked about it ad nauseum, but goodness gracious, is that guy in his bag as a recruiter right now? You got to take Xavier Robinson. I think you got to take Caden Durham, because that's one of those kids that, given that he lived in more America until he was 14 years old, that is an in-state kid who lives in Texas, in essence. Semantically, that is the closest thing to an in-state kid that you will find outside of state lines. So you can't say no to a kid like that.
Right.
Moreover, he's one of the most productive and explosive running backs in the entire country. Guy you got to make room for. So I think two of your three takes are going to be Durham and Robinson. But the big question then becomes, okay, it's pretty clear Mizell's winded now. Mizell's not going to want to keep this process open forever. And Oklahoma is where it appears he wants to be. Do you take him and just fill out your running back class with Mizell? Or do you keep waiting on James Peoples, who's probably not going to decide until July and is also heavily considering Ohio State and Alabama?
I mean, we're talking about Durham here.
Yeah, you're talking about, no, we're talking about, do you take Mizell if he wants to commit and just move on from Peoples? Because that's a hard thing to do, man.
No, like, it's very hard, dude.
Even if you have Caden Durham and Tavani Mizell in your running back class, to simply have to walk away from a really good recruiting position in the pursuit of a guy like James Peoples, who is top 100 nationally and top 10 at his position. You want to talk about first world problems, Brandon. DeMarco Murray has them.
Yeah, he is on another level right now. It's interesting that Oklahoma and Texas are basically just picking running backs just left and right here, which should make the Red River rivalry that much more fun, right? I mean, over the next few years, but I don't know, man. Like, I love James Peoples. I think he's just phenomenal, by the way. But I also have seen Tavani Mizell in person at the Florida Under Armour last spring. Dude can fly. He was co-MVP with Richard Young, which is not an easy accomplishment to do, to get with a player the ilk of Richard Young. Like, that's not easy. I don't know, dude. Like, like there are some people that feel like Mizell has dropped off a little bit since his move up to DC. He went from averaging over 6 yards a carry to averaging, I think, like 4 or 5 last year. Like, it wasn't as, and then he had like in a big game, they said he just kind of disappeared, but it was against one of the best teams in the country. So that also had something to do with it, I think. I don't know. For me, I trust DeMarco Murray. If DeMarco Murray says the guy can play and he's legit, he's legit. So
yeah, and
go ahead.
DeMarco Murray hasn't offered Jarrett Gibson yet. And everybody's wondering why. Why on earth would you not offer the number one running back in the 24/7 sports composite when he's been clamoring for an OU offer for a year plus? Well, I'm going to go ahead and say it, Brandon. And I don't know how hot of a take this will be, but I'd be willing to wager that DeMarco Murray knows a little bit more about what it takes to be successful at the running back position and which backs fit his vision and fit the system at Oklahoma than literally anyone else. As someone who played the position at the highest level, was an NFL Offensive Player of the Year, holds several school records at Oklahoma, and is only 5 seasons removed from playing professional football, that's a guy whose opinion I tend to trust when it comes to evaluating running backs. So even if the 24/7 sports composite says that Jarrett Gibson is the number one running back in the country, evidently he's not number one in DeMarco Murray's eyes. And right now, everybody should simply be trusting DeMarco Murray's eyes because there's literally not a single reason not to.
Yeah, no, I mean, all you got to do is look at Ramondre Stevenson that he evaluated and brought in. I mean,
no, that was pre. He.
Oh yeah, he was. That was Bowler. That was Bowler. He coached him. He didn't. Yeah, that's right. That was Bowler. That's on me. I keep forgetting that he didn't come in until 2020 during the COVID year. I mean, so, but I mean, he had McGowan. McGowan was turning out to be quite the, and obviously he didn't evaluate McGowan. That was Bowler that evaluated him, but ultimately that was DeMarco's guy by the end of the cycle. I was told this by somebody that knows very well. Like, so Robertson at Texas. Oh, this is going to kill all you fans. I don't know why I'm saying this. He had a great relationship with DeMarco Murray. Had DeMarco Murray been hired earlier at Oklahoma, he would have been a part of, because he wanted to go to Oklahoma. DeMarco would have recruited him, and he would have been a Sooner most likely. Probably, maybe not. Should have said that, but I mean, like, I know
that skeleton could have stayed in the closet, Brandon. But it makes sense because
he did. Bijan, like, everybody knew he loved Oklahoma.
Well, and Bijan was an Arizona guy. DeMarco at the time was the running backs coach at Arizona.
And I mean, and I'm not saying I guess that's a bad way. Saying he wouldn't have ended up in Texas, I guess, is a little strong. But I'll say this: it would have been a lot harder for Texas because of that relationship and the OU logo. Because I remember having a conversation with somebody in Norman at the time, and they were very high on Bijan. And the running back coach at the time, just was not. because he had Chase McClellan and he had Seth McGowan a part of that. And had the, yeah. I mean, I remember the board. You remember the board? Why are they not recruiting Bijan Robinson? He said he wanted to be. Remember all those quotes on the board? Like, oh my gosh. Yeah, that was a tough time to be a Sooner if they were as far as running back recruiting went. But DeMarco has since saved it. Gavin Sawchuk, Javante Barnes, Eric Gray. I mean, and then you got Hicks and Hollywood this past recruiting cycle. He's done a really good job. He's flipped that running back room in a few years, man. 2 cycles, flipped the running back room. And now it's deep. It's one of the best rooms on the team. Arguably the best room on the team by some, if you ask some people. So kudos to DeMarco Murray, man. Let's talk quickly Moser, and then we will get a couple of junior day things and be done. Let's end on a good note and not on Moser. How about that? So real quickly, your thoughts on the OU basketball program, and I'll give mine.
Moser's got something to prove. He's got a lot to prove heading into year 3, because some of the warning signs here in year 2 have been alarming. And I think the struggle, I posted a bunch of VIP notes last night on some rumblings that I've heard within the program, and suffice it to say there is unrest, understandably, after a season that just culminated in a 15-17 record and a first round exit at the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City. But if you have another personnel exodus, which I think is a very legitimate possibility right now, and Porter Moser has to overhaul his entire roster and undergo a total rebuild for the 3rd consecutive offseason, it's going to be really hard to believe in this team heading into year 3. And I mentioned it on the live stream the other night. I mentioned it in a Twitter space. I'll mention it again here. There's a very good chance, and I'm not saying it's 100% chance, but there's a real good chance that the only 3 scholarship guys Moser retains from this year's roster are his 3 freshmen, Milo Suzanne, Otega Owe, Luke Northweather, who redshirted. Everybody else might be gone, Brandon. And that's not an encouraging sign if that's the case. If most or all of the others, if most or all of the upperclassmen move on from the University of Oklahoma, people are going to take notice, and they're going to wonder what's going on behind the scenes. And it doesn't do Porter any favors when, as we reported at the time, Umoja Gibson and Elijah Harkless, the Sooners' 2 outstanding 2-year starters at guard, both chose to transfer this past offseason and land at schools that had no real hope of making the NCAA tournament, rather than play their final year under Porter Moser because they just didn't mesh with him as a coach. Well, right. Gibson has averaged 16 points a game at DePaul. Elijah Harkless has averaged 19 points a game at UNLV. If those 2 hadn't chosen to get out of town, I'm not saying Oklahoma's a tournament team, but my goodness, there's no way they're as offensively challenged and inefficient as they were this past season. And the challenge now for Moser and his staff becomes recruiting size via the transfer portal. They need size. They need size in the worst way. Their interior presence consisted of Tanner Groves and Jalen Hill, 6'9" and 6'7", respectively. Those are 2 guys that were playing out of position in the Big 12. Groves should have been a 4. Yeah. Hill should have been a 3. They were asked to be a 5 and a 4, respectively. But
neither can play defense.
And that's the deal too. You got to have a guy that can score from the paint, but you also got to have strong defenders and rebounders. Rebounding has been a consistent bugaboo for Oklahoma during Moser's tenure. And so there is reason to be skeptical. I'll acknowledge that there's reason to be skeptical. It's way too early to write Moser's epitaph, and I'm not suggesting that by any means. But there's certainly reason to be skeptical of the direction of this OU basketball program heading into year 3. And I think the season that lies ahead for Moser and this team come next November is going to be very, very telling. It's going to be pivotal one way or another. It'll be the season in which people decide, okay, Moser's got this thing headed in the right direction, or, oh gosh, regardless of how much of a home run hire this looked like at the time, and it did look like a home run hire, maybe this isn't the fit that we all thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And maybe it isn't headed in the direction that we anticipated that it was going to be. So a lot of questions to answer this offseason for OU.
It's not going to get any easier in 2024. I mean,
I think it will.
2023, excuse me, the 2023-24 season.
Gotcha.
It will not. Houston's coming into the league.
Yeah.
Houston, obviously UCF, Cincinnati, BYU. 3 of the 4 are notorious for having good basketball teams, by the way. So the Big 12 just went from hard to harder. It legitimately will be the best league again next year with the additions of those 4 teams on the basketball court. So I guess for me, I agree with everything you just said. I think Moser has to get out of this. He keeps wanting to replicate what he did at Loyola Chicago as far as like post players, when in reality, I can't remember the guy's name that played the post for Loyola Chicago. Do you remember his last name? Starts with a K, right?
Cameron Krutwig,
yeah. He was big though. Like he was a big body guy that could move, and he stayed down low. He shot a 3 or 2. He could pass the ball well, but he could defend down low. He was big and he could move and he could rebound, and he was strong. All things that Groves cannot do. And I've had like this thing against him all year because he's regressed as a player, Parker. Like totally regressed. I saw it early on and it just got worse and worse and worse. And I guess ultimately for me, it's just, you got to find a big body guy. Like you have all these athletes, right? Or scores that you have. I wouldn't say athletes. You have all these scores and guys that can put the ball on the court and drive and dish and get guys open. I mean, and it just seems like the pace of play doesn't fit the talent that they had, number one. You know what I mean? Like there was so many things off with this year's team. And what do you think the odds are he sticks after next year? If I said I think Kellen Sampson is the coach in 2024, would you say I'm crazy?
I wouldn't say you're crazy, but I don't think I would agree. I would say the odds are substantially greater than 50% that Moser is the head coach in the Sooners' first season in the SEC. Just because I think you want to have some continuity, unless it's just an abject dumpster fire next year. Then obviously you have to move on.
There's a chance it could be.
If you only win like 10 games, then okay. Like, especially transitioning to the SEC at that point, you almost have to move on. But I don't see that happening. Moser's still a good basketball coach.
No, yeah, he is. But sometimes fit is everything.
Fit is everything, sure. But one of the things he has proven, man, is he can recruit. Uzan and Owe, those were 2 really good ads. I'm curious to see how immediate of an impact Caden Cooper and Jacob Cole have when they show up. But
Cooper's a dude, man.
And so as I think about what the leash looks like for Porter Moser in the short term, I don't think the Oklahoma administration and Joe Castiglione is going to feel pressured to move on from Moser after year 3 even if they don't make the tournament, unless it's just chaos and anarchy, unless the Lloyd Noble Center effectively burns. If the Sooners win 9 or 10 games and just prove completely inept on the hardwood, then your hand's kind of forced as you transition to the SEC. But
might be a good thing if the Lloyd Noble burned. That place
only on the OU Insider podcast will you hear a journalist endorsing arson.
I'm talking about how piece of crap that place is.
No, I understand.
It was a joke. Seriously though, it place sucks. And I don't want it to burn. I'm just saying, like, they do need a new arena though.
Yeah, they do, and they'll get one eventually. I don't know when. Joe Castiglione said last week that they'll know more in June as far as the future of OU basketball's venue. But
fair enough.
In the short term, like that new arena is not getting built overnight. So your first year in the SEC, you're still going to be playing in the Lloyd Noble Center. So it's the hand you've been dealt, and you got to make the most of it at this point. And you got to turn lemons into lemonade, as it were, if you're Porter Moser and this OU staff. So yeah, the job faces inherent challenges. Yeah, it hasn't all gone according to plan thus far, but I'm not out on Moser yet. Okay. Talk to me again a year from today, and we'll see where things stand. But
I'm in the same boat as you. I think he deserves a little bit more time, because it just hasn't. It just, like, yeah, he's brought some of those players in, but some of it's just been just by necessity and just kind of a rush to try to build a roster each and every year. You would think that hopefully he's got some better connections year 2 to 3 to where he can, go get some transfers that will make a distinct difference on the court and within the program, and that fit his personality and what he's looking for within the program collectively. So I don't know. Real quick, very, very quickly, end on a good note here. Junior Day thoughts, March 4th, Junior Day thoughts. If you want to talk about a player or two, go for it.
Yeah, I think the big development of the weekend was OU certainly moved into the lead for Will Nnnerei. They solidified their position with Michael Hawkins. And I think they also made big moves with some guys that maybe aren't on the top of the priority list right now. But as we saw last class, sometimes your best laid plans fall through, and it behooves you to have a viable backup option. And that's where I consider a guy like Joseph Ajonye and the progress that OU made with him over the weekend certainly significant. KJ Daniels, the wide receiver out of Louisiana, seems things went really, really well there. I'm still working on catching up with Grant Bricks, 4-star offensive lineman out of the state of Iowa. Very, very busy kid, hard to get a hold of, but one that has taken multiple trips to Oklahoma now. I'm kind of starting to get the sense that OU's got some juice. I don't know if I want to say they lead just yet for Grant Bricks, but they're in the peloton, let's put it that way. And I also think I'm not too far off from issuing a crystal ball prediction for another offensive line target. I think the only one I have a CB in for right now is Casey Poe. Still feeling decent about that, despite the fact that Alabama jumped into the fray and there are some family ties there. But it's talked to a lot of sources, went down to talk to Casey himself. Still seems like OU's in the catbird seat there. But there's another offensive lineman that I'm not too far away from putting in a crystal ball.
Cruz?
We'll see. Who's that now?
Cruz?
Not Daniel Cruz. No. People can have their guesses. They can speculate. I'll let them. They'll know soon enough.
Gotcha. Yeah, for me, I'm with you. I think there was some big movements there at the Junior Day. I think TJ Lindsey, defensive lineman out of Bryan, Arkansas. I think a lot of people feel that Arkansas is going to be hard to beat. Notre Dame's going to be hard to beat, but I think Oklahoma has really positioned themselves to be a major player there. Expect an official visit to take place as well, and for him to return within the next, month or so as well back to Norman for maybe a spring practice or the spring game. Tavani Mizell, same thing. Spring game visit is trying to be worked out right now. And an official 100% is taking place, he says. So the running four-star running back is the former Georgia commit. Oklahoma's, as Parker says, is in the catbird seat there. So they're in a really good spot. Programs like Maryland, programs like North Carolina, programs like Auburn, there's a couple of others that are trying to make a run there and catch Oklahoma. I don't know if they'll be able to do it. Trying to think of another. I mean, 5-star defensive lineman, Edric Houston. People want to say, no way, no way, no way. It's an Alabama, Clemson, Georgia battle, which is fair and correct. But I think Oklahoma's positioned themselves to be, at the very least, get an official visit out of him. He doesn't know who's going to get officials. He's got a lot of visits he wants to take before he makes that unofficials he wants to take before he makes that type of decision. But I think it could happen. It could really happen. I think Oklahoma went from being just kind of a team to being a team that he's definitely considering very, very deeply at this point. So it was a great junior day for Oklahoma all in all. And I think, when you look at it from the grand scheme of things, I don't know that they could have done any better than what they've done and what they did. So, all right, that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast. If you're not a member of OU Insider, or actually if you're not a subscriber to this YouTube and you're watching it there, subscribe right down there below. There's a little subscribe and like button. Get it. We got a lot of content coming for you guys on this YouTube channel. And if you're not a member of the OU Insider Under the Visor, or if you're not a member of the OU Insider VIP board, $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards. It's 50% off right now, so $53 gets you in the door for a whole year. And not just OU Insider, but all of 24/7 Sports, every VIP site. So we would love to have you guys on there. We continue to grow at a very fast pace, and that's all thanks to you guys. We feel blessed. We say this every time. Super, super, super blessed to be able to do this job for you guys, and we can't thank you guys enough for following us and for subscribing not only to the channel, but to OU Insider VIP. All right. For Parker Thune, my name is Brandon Drumm. You guys have a blessed day.